Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omer. Now, the Taliban has rejected Kabul's offer of talks next month in Saudi Arabia, where the armed group fighting to restore strict Islamic law in Afghanistan will meet the United States officials to further these peace efforts. On the other hand, Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has said his talks with Qatari leadership in a day-long visit to Doha were successful in light of Pakistan continuing efforts to bring peace to the war-torn region. Now, what does this mean for the peace process, and how far is this development going to go if the Taliban refuse to speak with the Afghan government? Let's hear what our experts have to say. So, welcoming to the show, Mr. Intezar Khadim, a political analyst joining from Kabul. Welcome to the show. What is your take on the developments so far? You are situated in Kabul. You have a bird's eye view of what is happening and unfolding within Afghanistan. Give us your insight.
Well, thank you very much. Even though I see the noise and fuss here in Kabul, that some people are optimistic toward a better future, and sometimes Taliban are rejecting direct talk with the Afghan government. You also see sometimes the hypnotized nature of the Americans. Sometimes Haider is just like vanishing away. But along with all these humpy-bumpy process of peace, I'm still very optimistic for peace. If Taliban is rejecting to directly negotiate or maybe have a face-to-face meeting with the Afghan delegation, it's not quite a surprise for me. It's part of the negotiation, because if you look back to the historic process of different negotiation model around the world, it happens. For example, I'm repeatedly giving you the example of PNG, which is a small country, but the actual negotiation took at least more than 2 years. So far, what is going on in Afghanistan, it's optimistic. We're still on the track, and every person is very happy. Taliban, for the time being, will reject direct talk with the Afghan government, and that's for two specific reasons. Reason number one, Taliban would like to show for the Afghan government and also for the American government that we are not in a desperate position. If you would like to talk to us, yes, of course, we are talking with you. But if you don't talk to us, still we're in a stronger position. We still have our foot soldiers fighting in the ground, committed, and they're still in the good mood. At the same time, Taliban would demand the Afghan government or maybe the American government, if you sit on the table, even if we are talking with the Afghan government, you have to be giving more incentive, more privileges, in a bigger share in the political power sharing deal of the peace talk.
Let me just quickly, sorry, Mr. Khadim, I want you to continue with what you're saying, but very quickly, I want to ask you here. Now, when you say that Taliban is in a position where they're not in a rush, and when the Trump administration earlier indicated that they will be withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, doesn't this really throw the U.S. Special Envoy to Afghanistan off course and put the bargaining chip in Taliban's hands?
Well, yes, it's a repetitive mistake of the the American President, Mr. Trump, as Mr. Obama did a mistake in 2011, and then the Taliban just remain in a wait-and-see mood, because he said that we are withdrawing our forces in 2014, and that's why the Taliban were thinking that, okay, fight for more 3 years, and then finally the Afghan government would be in solo fight, and we will just defeat them. Trump, at the same time, doing same mistake, and he's just watching the same repetitive, boring movie the Afghan people and the American people watched in 2011, 12, and 13, and 14. So yes, if Trump is using that type of rhetoric, yes, again, it gives a bonus to the Taliban, and they will be again feeling in a stronger position. So even though Washington denied the report that we are not exiting 7,000 forces from Afghanistan, but still that news has not been a good news. So let's be smarter and wiser in communication with Taliban rather than to be acting stupid and naive.
So do you think Pentagon's statement coming soon after, saying that we have we have not been intimated by the White House that we will be withdrawing forces from Afghanistan anytime soon, seems to be a bit of a cover-up or maybe a face-saving gimmick, because the situation on the ground doesn't really allow, it seems, according to experts, to give the leverage in the Taliban's hands, with other rivals gaining momentum there in Afghanistan?
Well, all these different dots make a colorful picture in Afghanistan. When we talk the fight in peace deal in Afghanistan, the American government, the Afghan government, the Taliban, and the Regime countries have their own parts to play in it. The mixed messages of the Pentagon and again the White House and all these kind of different counterparts confuse the audiences, also the Afghan government and also the Taliban, because still there's no clarity what the United States of America is intending to do in Afghanistan, because they're not just managing projects, they are managing a very complex process of peace after 18 years of war. So even if Pentagon is rejecting that there has not been any talk of the exiting of 7,000 personnel from Afghanistan, this announcement from Mr. Trump or the White House by any means made it a damage. In next future time, we have to be so much worried about it, because we have to be thinking double time when we say anything about the peace in war of issues of Afghanistan.
Mr. Haider, to get a better understanding of what is unfolding in Afghanistan, who better to say than people from Afghanistan? You're a political analyst in Kabul. Do you feel in your observations of how the NATO-led forces, the US soldiers on the ground, maybe Pentagon is not conveying or getting through to the White House? Maybe there's a dichotomy of narratives coming out from both sides. There is not a complete understanding of what needs to be done there?
One of the reasons of the elongation of the Afghan war, or maybe the complexities we are suffering right now, has been the dichotomy that has been among the American government and the NATO member countries in Afghanistan. And I have repeatedly said that because many of the NATO member countries in Afghanistan repeatedly off the channel talks, they said in off the channel talk that we have not been in picture whatever the American government is doing. So that's why I had a meeting with the NATO delegation in Afghanistan, and I told them that before you guys just make a deal with the Taliban, you have to make a deal between the NATO member countries and the American government. So with all these small mistakes, we can worsen the situation. That's why you're absolutely right. The economy in the ramification of opinions and position among the NATO member countries and the American government, making the case very worse. That's why we have to be thinking double time again in the future.
It's interesting that you mentioned that there does appear to be a communication gap with the NATO, the coalition forces there, with the US administration as well. But this also pulls in Pakistan again and again, with US blaming Pakistan for the insurgency, for being incubator cell for terrorists in Afghanistan. And now we see the foreign minister of Pakistan, we see the prime minister of Pakistan continuously pushing for a political solution to the region. How valid are these allegations in today's time? Let's not delve into what has happened in the past too much. I'm asking you in reflection to the current scenario, how valid are these allegations on Pakistan?
And that's a good question. We should not think on the past, because whatever happened in the past, that's quite obvious in the history. So we should not be thinking on that. What I see right now, the contribution of Pakistani government, I think I'm appreciative of that as an ordinary Afghan. The travel Mr. Qureshi is doing, in the messages he's giving, and also the commitment he's projecting for the Afghan people and also for the international community, that's quite optimistic. And we have to build on it. We have to garner and buid on it to ensure that every single partner in the Afghan process, even if that's inside or maybe outside, they have to be mustering efforts, they have to be giving hand to each other in the way Pakistan is asserting or maybe sounding off. That's optimistic, but let's say that. Let's turn or maybe change words to action, because optimism from action is quite different terms. So we will be waiting until Pakistan is acting beyond the wording and beyond the assertion they are doing toward the peace. So I'm happy, I'm appreciative, but let's wait for the actual time that how the words turn to more practices and more tangible results.
I'm trying to understand better your take on what Pakistan's role is. Let me also bring in just a quick reminder of the recent development where the Trump administration wrote a letter to the Pakistani government saying that please do your best in influencing or trying to bring the Taliban to the table. Again, how valid is this claim, and is this in a way trying to say that Pakistan still has a role in cultivating insurgency in Afghanistan?
Well, there is three processes or three stages of pieces: the pre-negotiation stage, the negotiation stage, and after negotiation stage. The first stage is the trust-building stages. Let's say Pakistan does not have control over Taliban, but they have leverages and they have influences over the top leadership of Taliban. So we cannot deny that. What Pakistan rule could be quite clear is just convincing the top leadership of Pakistan to get into actual talks with the American and also with the Afghan government. And as long as that talk starts, the Pakistani government, as they just play the rules that they have to be a guarantor of the peace talk between the American, the Taliban, and the Afghan government. Also, they can ensure the regional countries' contribution. For example, they can talk with the Chinese, with the Qataris, with the Saudi, the Iranian government, and all the other partners who can play or who may play a role in the Afghan process. So the Pakistani government, as they have a fuller understanding of the Afghan war, the Afghan peace, and they have quite an experience with the top of Afghan Taliban leadership. So in three ways. Number one, convincing the Taliban to come into actual negotiation with the Afghan government, to play a guarantee role when the peace deal has happened. And third, they have to be negotiation. They have to be having a negotiation with the regional countries to play active, clear, and realistic role in the Afghan peace to ensure stability in this country.
Okay, let me welcome our second guest here. Lieutenant General Moinuddin Haider, defense analyst, is joining us here from Karachi. General, I hope you were able to hear our political analyst from Kabul, Mr. Khadim's take on Pakistan's role in the peace process. I would like to hear your argument of, especially in light of Trump administration earlier writing to Pakistan saying play a bigger role, do more in bringing the Taliban to the table. And like I mentioned earlier, if we are to put away the historical context of what Pakistan's role has been in the region and talk about currently what Pakistan's role is right now in the peace process, could you please shed some light on that?
Yes, I think Pakistan has wholeheartedly agreed to the American suggestion to try to persuade Taliban to come on the dialogue table. And Pakistan has long relations, especially after the Soviet invasion, because we were host to 4 million Afghan refugees here, and all the top Afghan leadership used to be here. So there is a historical background to our rapport with them, and we have tried to convince Taliban that there has been too much bloodshed and destruction of their country over the last 40 years, and it is time that through a dialogue they must enter a process of, joining the government coalition and taking part in the election or sharing power with them and in peace. So that, ultimately it is the Afghans who are suffering and it is their land which is being devastated. So Pakistan has played its part positively and has played its part strongly to convince Taliban to come on the table. I think Afghans are quite happy about this, and Americans are, I think, quite satisfied with that. And we'll continue to play our role in this regard because peace in Afghanistan is crucial to peace in Pakistan. So we will do our utmost, whatever can be done, to continue to help this and facilitate this process of dialogue to bring peace there.
And General Moinuddin, what is your take on the Trump administration giving statements indicating that they will be withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, and at the same time hearing the Pentagon say that, well, we have not been intimated by the White House to make any such move? How do you see this? If hypothetically that, and if the forces do withdraw, how will this affect the peace process?
Yes, I mean, this has been going on for some time in the U.S. policy. That Trump, through a tweet, through a statement, gives a very strong statement, says sometime against Pakistan, that Pakistan has done nothing to help us, and they have taken billions of dollars. And then, the State Department says, Pakistan has helped America a great deal, and they still help us, and our relations with them are okay. So this dichotomy has been going on for some time. But they have started withdrawing from Syria, and I hope he has made a decision that he will pin down. He had announced this, but maybe the Kabul government said that, until the dialogue process takes some roots and advances and progresses, the present Afghan government will be destabilized if you make a withdrawal without creating some stable arrangement in Afghanistan. So I think this is why the Pentagon has issued statement of this nature.
Right, Mr. Khadim, let me ask you this. Now, while the U.S. specifically loves to blame Pakistan for the security situation in Pakistan, for inculcating terrorists, for being an incubator cell, for its link to the Taliban, they've been there for such a long time now in the 17-year war in Afghanistan. Isn't this, in a way, a failure on their part to not be able to build on the infrastructure, the economy, the water supplies? I mean, right now, the highest child mortality rate is in Afghanistan. They've spent over $3 trillion in Afghanistan already. Don't you see it's a bit of a hypocritical statement continuing to push the blame on other countries?
Well, the Afghan enigma just raises three sides. Number one, the bad governance, weak practice in Afghanistan for the last so many years. Importantly, in the last 18 years, I'm not very convinced on the Afghan government of the current government and maybe in the past government. They have not been able to ensure good governance. And good governance has their own definition. We have not ensured the Afghan people feel participated and included in the Afghan process. Second has been the regional countries' hypocrisy. They have not been very good friends, but they have been frenemies. They have been friend in obvious term, but they have been enemy in hidden style. And third has been the strategic failure of the international community. They came to Afghanistan in 2001, and they spent $126 billion in development. And I'm not convinced at all, even 10% of the money has been spent rightly. The infrastructure in Afghanistan is completely just like a hell. The power, the water management, the good governance, the law enforcement, all these things need a rethinking, in rehashing, in revisionism. At the same time, if you look back here, why the ongoing war in Afghanistan is just getting rages in getting daily life in Afghanistan is corruption. I mean, we have been the second country or maybe third country around the world who is most corrupt. For example, the drug. 7,000 hectares then has been cultivated on drug in poppy. Now it has been 400,000 hectares land cultivated by opium. So now if you look back to the resources of war and maybe the conflict in armed opposition in Afghanistan, there has been dozens of reasons. So of course, the bad governance, the failed strategic intervention of the international community, and the wrong policies of the regional countries, including Pakistan. So this has been a fundamental reason that why the Afghan war is going on until today, and maybe they will take so many more lives until we have to think on our strategic rule, respective rules in Afghanistan for coming years.
It's interesting you mentioned the countries, I understand, saying are fighting a proxy war within Afghanistan under the pretext of friendship. Now, General Moeddin, this question is for you because it obviously brings in Pakistan into this narrative. What I feel like is missing here, and if you could highlight a little more, is India's role, Russia's role in this region, as they are also being made part of these peace talks. Could you expand a little on that?
Yes, India has been given a role more than, I think, what it deserves to have in Afghanistan. They don't share a border with Afghanistan, but they are, of course, investing some money in their development projects, and they are using that land as a proxy against Pakistan. And secondly, as far as Russia is concerned, their only interest is to see that destabilizing forces do not, come through Central Asia and destabilize their region. And I think they have burned their fingers already, and they want to keep out of that situation. So China, of course, is affected, Iran is affected. So Pakistan used to take active part inside Afghanistan, even, fighting side by side with them against the Northern Alliance and against the Soviets. But Pakistan has revised its policy and has completely withdrawn from, taking any part inside Afghanistan. Our policy is neutral now and to remain out and to seek peace in Afghanistan, not in any way siding with any party, nor, trying to interfere in their internal affairs. This is the new policy Pakistan is adopting.
Okay, and Mr. Khadim, still on India, India has been declared the 5th biggest donor to reconstruction works within Afghanistan to the tune of $3 billion. They're responsible for also taking part in the construction of Shahtoot Dam, which is right now under progress in land acquisition, etc. Now, Afghanistan government has continuously endorsed India's role and said it is a friendly, brotherly country. How do you see this interfering in trying to bring all stakeholders on the same page to try and bring peace in the area?
Personally, I'm hurt down deep when my top politician is using emotional language. In politics, there's no sympathy, there's no emotion, there's no brotherhood, and there is no sisterhood in country state-to-state relation. China should not be like a big brother to Afghanistan, unless the Afghan government should ensure that we have our strategic interest in the Indian engagement. At the same level, as you told before, that we should not be delved deeper in reiterating about the past engagement of Pakistan and Afghanistan. So there has been proxies by Indian and by the Pakistanis in the Afghan lane. And I still remember the statement of Rizwan Akhtar, and I still remember the Indian deep engagement in Afghanistan. They were opposing and warding off each other's presence in Afghanistan. At the same level, you see Iranians in the Saudi Arabian. Both of them are the Middle Eastern regional powers, and they would like to hedge their influence in Afghanistan. The Iranians do not like the Saudis to be having a good friendship with the Afghan government. So again, the Chinese and the Russians and the Americans and all, just name it. A lot of countries are just playing different proxies in Afghanistan, and that's really hurt the Afghan infrastructure, history, social structure. What I'm really thinking that we should have been playing differently. We should have been able to balance relation between India and Pakistan, in China, in Americans, in the Iranians, Saudis, where we failed. But again, I have to confess this. The Afghan government in the last 18 years has been a new democracy. We practice new standards of democratic life. There was lack of technical capacity. There was lack of technical understanding of diplomacy. That was one part, in domestic part, failing part. But regional countries has not been very candid, very honest, and they just try to get their interest from the weaknesses that we were projecting in the regional diplomacy. So yeah, Afghanistan of today is just moving forward with a very optimistic ideology. We will be better, inshallah, tomorrow, and we will be standing on our own feet. But this is tedious and very exhausting way, and we have to be ready for that. But at the same time, we are expecting the regional countries that they should not be playing proxies anymore. They should be thinking Afghanistan a good friend in neighboring country, not like a country where they are hedging their strategic drift in other kind of things.
When Taliban was at its peak in power in Afghanistan, there were only 3 countries, Muslim countries, that had acknowledged their existence. There was Saudi Arabia, there was UAE, there was Pakistan. Now, Pakistan's role in trying to bring the Taliban to speak with the Afghan government to move forward, how do you see that unfold?
Well, I see Pakistan's role very vibrant and very constructive. If they try wholeheartedly, they can convince the Taliban leadership. Well, definitely, again and again, I say that we should not be using the term controlling Taliban, but we are using the influencing Taliban. So, yes, if Pakistan try from the depth of their heart and with no political ambiguities, I think they are able to connect again with the top leadership, convince them for a peace deal, and count on the better return of the peace deal between the Taliban and the Afghan government. So I do not have any doubt, and I trust Pakistan can do that, but we will be very cautiously be optimistic that how Pakistan will be turning the strategic vision towards Pakistan, toward Afghanistan, and how they will be redefining the peace deal between Taliban and the Afghan government.
All right, stay with me, Mr. Khadim. Now, I'd like to welcome our 4th guest here, Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid, defense analyst, joining us here from Islamabad. Thank you for joining us here on Newsfire. We're talking about Pakistan's role in the larger picture of things and trying to bring peace in Afghanistan, especially as Shah Mahmood Qureshi has just concluded his trip in Doha, calling it very successful in trying to bring the regional players into these peace talks. I'd like your view on this right now, please.
Thanks a lot. I think the first important thing is that the stance of Pakistan has been redeemed, and we were the ones who were saying for such a long time that war and battles are not the right way to find a one solution. It has to be talks and talking to all the factions. First, they wanted some entities to be out, then they agreed, and once I say they, I'm talking about Americans. They agreed to talk to Afghan Taliban, and now I think there are just small hiccups, and after that the talks will get going. But the main thing to understand is that this is my view, that Americans have actually lost the kinetic battles in Afghanistan. We will not go into the details and reasons and why do I say that. Not only I say that, even the Americans themselves are saying it. So there is no doubt about it. Secondly, I think Pakistan must, I'm sure we fully recognize our importance and our stakes in Afghanistan. The importance is that I think we have been helping a lot, and we have been helping Americans, whereas they have been blaming us for other things, but actually all along, this is not a small thing that the ground logistic was going from here, the air logistic was going from here. We had given them the refueling facility. We were sharing intelligence with them. In certain cases, some intelligence was automated. Whosoever is coming and leaving the airports and all that, that was being shared with them. And also, and we were asking only three things. We were asking that please keep Indians away from operating from Afghanistan on us. Please help us to send back the Afghan refugees. Please help us to erect this fence. And it is ironic to learn that they did not support any of these things, except for that coalition support fund, which they have also stopped for the last quite a year. So I think all said and done, I personally feel that whatever policy Pakistan was pursuing, that has succeeded. And whatever policy the Americans were and the allied forces were pursuing, that has been defeated. And now is the time that Pakistan must realize that we must make sure that our interests are looked after. And I think the first thing we must demand from Americans is that please now tell the world that all along you were saying that we are training Taliban and we are nurturing them here and we have camps over here. So please tell the world that it was your miscalculation. And secondly, well, this is good that we are helping in the peace talks, and we must do that. That is in our interest, because peace in Afghanistan will bring peace in Pakistan. But we must demand from Americans that they must tell Indians that please leave Afghanistan as far as their intelligence operations are concerned, as far as their, these other LIC, low-intensity operations are concerned against Pakistan. Because if we fail to make them agree on these two things, we will be just serving their purpose and not ours. That is what my take on the situation. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, General, I want to come back, but Mr. Khadim, let me pose this question to what the General has just said about demands from the Afghan leadership and from the US leadership, who seems to be greeting India with open hands, saying that we will make sure, as experts have said in statements by anonymous sources coming out, that we will make sure that India has a share in the peace process. What is your take on it? Do you feel like the Afghan government has any say in trying to make sure that Pakistan's demands are given any serious thought or are taken seriously?
Well, there is two different things. One is the holistic approach for real peace, and one is the politicized approach for peace. In Afghanistan, even a slight mistake can deviate the whole process into hell, and that's why we have to be ensuring that any country who can play a role in bringing peace, that he should be welcome in that effort, should be appreciated. As Mr. General said here, the Afghan peace is equivalent to the Pakistani peace, because now it's a two sides of one coin, and it's a two-country have a roomy border. In Afghanistan, there's no tolerance for peace. In more terrorism in Afghanistan would just destroy the whole infrastructure, the hope and optimism for future. The same level is in Pakistan. Now, American has been in Afghanistan, and now they turn all the tide, and they would like to redefine the Afghan mission. They would like to make a peace with the Taliban, and you see how busy Khalilzad is, because he is translating the word from Trump. And in Pakistan, I have also one option on the table. Pakistan should extend a holistic, realistic, and clear support to the Afghan peace process, or maybe they have to be ready to oppose the American interests in Afghanistan and in the region. So yes, I say if India can play constructive role in the Afghan peace, why not? But if the intervention of the Indian making causes and problems in Afghanistan and that destroy the peace, or maybe just bring more ambiguities to the process, I think that should not be an action that we have to take it. So a last statement or last word to say here, anything, any step from any country, from anybody who can contribute in the Afghan peace process should be welcomed, but more headache that can destroy the peace process should be warded off with clear hand and with clear mind.
Right. And General, now just to you quickly, last question here. India's role, of course, is a big determinant to how this peace process will go forward. But at the same time, India's expenditure on its defense budget has skyrocketed this year. It's one of the top 5 countries. It's beat UK even on how much it spent on defense as compared to, as a ratio to its GDP. And then at the same time, it's battling one of the biggest poverty crises, where 68% of the country is said to be living under $2 a day. But then you see them investing large amounts, $3 billion to date, and also this new dam that they're working on in Afghanistan with the World Bank is coming to a tune of $236 million. How is this playing out in Pakistani politics? How is it playing out here when we continue to contribute positively and trying to bring the Taliban to the table to speak to the Afghan government? Could you reflect a little on this, please?
Thanks a lot. First of all, let me make it clear as far as my assessment is concerned. The Afghan government per se, the present Afghan government, is not a representative of the people anymore. It was, yes, 2-3 years back. From there onward, I think they have lost their clout, they have lost their influence, and they have no say as far as the, we understand that is the reason that why Afghan Taliban are also saying that we'll only talk to Americans. Now, as far as India is concerned, your question, coming back to the question, it is good, it is all right. Your assessment is all right that they are spending a lot on their defense budget and they are getting stronger as far as the military is concerned. I will not, comment on their other aspects of poverty and all that.
Right.
And they're a stronger power than Pakistan.
Right.
But their role in Afghanistan, as far as our perception is concerned, has been negative. But of course, they have carried out some, soft influence also in Afghanistan that can stay. We have nothing against it. If they want to build roads and all that, of course, anything which hurts us, like this dam you are talking about, we will oppose that. I am talking about their hardcore intelligence operations against Pakistan from Afghanistan.
Right.
And I do not believe in this, even after having such an influence in Afghanistan, that now we have become a major stakeholder and without our assistance, the talks cannot proceed. And even then we say that we are only interested in peace and we don't want to demand anything. I am not in favor of giving this everything free to the Americans or Indians or anyone. We will work for peace in Afghanistan, but we will extract our price for whatever help we give, and that is the price which I've already said. They must take back the Afghan refugees. They must help in erecting defense. They must, if not finish, reduce the influence of India, especially that influence which hurts us. And then, of course, we are all out to help them. I mean, nothing in this world goes free. That just because the world wants peace in Afghanistan, we also want peace in Afghanistan. So we just give it free of our cost and free of any interest, free of any purpose as far as we are concerned. I am not for it. Peace per se, just peace is not the end that we would like to have. Of course, peace along with our interest, that has to be seen. That is my view, and I may not be right.
No, but Mr. Khadim, if reflect very quickly in just a minute the situation of the ISIS presence in Afghanistan and how detrimental it is, because as reports come out, Taliban are also trying to fight their rival group, and this is interfering with the peace process in itself. And yet, at the same time, you mentioned the government's corruption, and they're controlling large swatches of land in Afghanistan. How is this going to play out, especially when peace talks are being pushed from so many stakeholders to try and come to a conclusion here?
Well, again, I have to say that one is a generic perception, which is corruption and bad governance, but at the same time, there's some few people in the Afghan leadership who are also very committed, and they show a very positive intention toward ensuring peace. At the same time, I think I do not know exactly what I means in the Afghan context, because it's a varying definition from time to time, from day to day. Sometimes you see the very big, gigantic presence in Afghanistan, and sometimes you see just like a very dead-off name. We do not know exactly what ISIS in Afghanistan means, how much that exists in Afghanistan, how they're funded, and what their future intention will be. But what I can really focus is the Afghan peace in the danger of Taliban, where you can see how hard, big, committed they have been based on the report of Cigar. So that's what we can understand, and we can define that.
Right, and General Naim Khalid, very quickly, just ending comments from you. Coalition forces themselves are estimating that the number of fighters is growing to the tune of 3,000 to 5,000 fighters in Afghanistan. How this affects our border security, how this affects peace within Pakistan, and serves as an incentive to bring peace in the region. Very quickly, sir.
Thanks, Arun. The first thing is that it is actually the regional countries who can actually bring peace. I'll just stop here as far as the regional countries' role is concerned. ISIL and other such groups are concerned. Many of them are fabricated. Even I believe that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, they are a fabrication of some of our enemies like India and even Americans. So my take is, once the Americans leave, all the forces which they were supporting, they will get weakened, and the Afghan people will overcome all such impediments, and there will be peace in Afghanistan after some time. Of course, there will be some infighting. There will be grand jirgas taking place, and this Afghan government you will not find them anywhere except for Northern Alliance and certain other entities. So it will be Afghan Taliban, Northern Alliance, some other entities getting together, holding a grand jirga and going for the peace in Afghanistan. The smaller entities will just fade away.
So you're saying withdrawal of forces is key. From here, I have to quickly thank you for participating in Newswire, General Khalid, and also Mr. Khadim. We'll take a quick short break here. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire. Now, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has secured her third consecutive term with a landslide victory, winning 288 out of the 300 contested parliamentary seats. Meanwhile, the opposition has cried foul and called the vote farcical in an atmosphere marred by violence and intimidation and vote rigging. 17 people were killed in Bangladesh in clashes between ruling party supporters and the opposition. What does this mean for the people of Bangladesh and the state of democracy there? Let's find out from our guest, Mr. Masood Karim, who is joining us from Dhaka, a journalist. Welcome to the show, Mr. Karim. Very quickly, your take on how the elections, how the polling day went in Bangladesh overall. What was the sentiment?
The polling day was apparently peaceful, particularly around the capital, Dhaka, was very peaceful. But outside Dhaka, we had some violent incidents, and you just mentioned that some people were killed in clashes. And other, the voter turnout maybe the 80%. Our chief election commissioner will brief about the election shortly, and also Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina will brief the foreign observer after a few hours, and also the opposition alliance leader Dr. Kamal Hussain will brief this evening. So, you know, that the result was absolutely landslide victory, which Sheikh Hasina will be the hat trick for 3 consecutive years Prime Minister, and the result for the opposition BNP is not very, very disastrous result, which is unexpected for many people. But this is the reality, and the election was...
Are you saying that the result was unexpected for many people?
Result outcome, people expect the more seats will be win, but finally we have seen the dramatically it was a very, very disastrous result for BNP, because BNP is one of the major political parties in Bangladesh, and several times the BNP led by Begum Khaleda Zia was in power. And so in the history of BNP, this is the largest disaster for its party. It was a very, very disastrous result for. And yesterday, BNP and its alliance leader, Dr. Kamal Hussain, has rejected the result, and he demanded for
a recount. But let me ask you a little more about the killings that took place. That the ruling party said that supporters and opposition supporters had clashed. How did the death toll get so high? Were tensions that rife? And what kind of security forces, crowd dispersal measures were taken that there were 17 deaths? I understand there were 600,000 security personnel deployed across the country. But what happened that caused so many deaths?
Yes, every human life is very, very valuable. So 17 deaths, we do not expect any death in the election. It should be without death and without crash. But if you look at the previous history of Bangladesh's election, in 2014 election, which was one-sided election, and 157 people were killed. And every election there was death toll. This time it was heavy tension election because both BNP and Malik had participated at the election. So it seemed a very competitive election, tension were mounted. So it was unfortunate death of 17 or 19. We think that it is a high number.
So who would you say is responsible for these clashes, especially in light when the Secretary of Ministry of Information is also not seeming to acknowledge that these deaths have taken place, calling the atmosphere to be very peaceful? Like you also mentioned, overall it was quite peaceful.
I had mentioned the overall atmosphere was peaceful. In the situation in Dhaka, there was no even single incident of clashes or any. And outside Dhaka, there were some clashes between the supporters of both our Malik and BNP supporters. It is quite sometimes happening in Bangladesh during the election day and before election and post-election violence is sometimes happen. And almost every election, if you see, the death toll is more than that. So it happened.
But that clearly doesn't make a very good argument. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but it doesn't really make a very good argument that violence to the effect that deaths are expected in elections to take place doesn't seem to cut it really well, especially when there is an unprecedented number of security personnel deployed across the country in preparation of these elections.
No, I am not saying that. I have said that it is unfortunate events, death or clashes. But I am saying the violence, level of violence was lower than other elections in Bangladesh. And we hope in the next elections should be more lower violence. Even if we can hold a violence-free election, that is very, very expected. And violence or death is not expected, is not acceptable for anyone. But otherwise the election was all right, but the result was very...
right. So, the opposition leader, Kamal Hussain, has also come out and said, along with all the opposition supporters, that these were rigged elections. They were warning against this right before the election took place, as the campaigns were underway, as thousands of supporters for BNP were arrested over one claim or the other. They have demanded from the Election Commission to look into the irregularities. What will be the response of the Election Commission now?
We are waiting to hear the responses from the Chief Election Commissioner shortly. But yesterday, the Chief Election Commissioner was visited some polling stations, and journalists were asking him about the absence of the polling agents of opposition BNP, and the Chief Election Commissioner said that if somebody not come, if some polling agents do not come to the polling station, what Election Commission can do? Because nobody prevented, nobody barred to come to the polling stations. What the opposition people are saying that was the fear that they will be attacked or they will be buried, that was the fear really. So most of the polling stations there were no polling agents from the opposition party,
right?
The BNP
So that really does pose a question whether these elections were fair. Like you said yourself, from the opposition party, there were no polling agents even present in these booths. And also, let me also mention here that
opposition polling agents were present, but that was fewer.
What is your personal opinion? Do you feel, in all honesty, that the elections that took place last night, were they fair?
No, it is depends on in compared to the Bangladesh election, it was all right in a sense. The people have gone to the polling stations, they have casted their vote.
No, let me rephrase the question here. According to the Awami League's party manifesto, on promoting democracy, alleviating poverty, promoting the economy, and everything that Sheikh Hasina has continuously promised in the past and claims has delivered and will continue to deliver as she is third time in power. Do you feel in all democratic norms these elections were fair?
No, if you give a standard for standard democracy, it is never happened anywhere in the world, in Bangladesh, India, or across the world. But if you label it the standard of Bangladesh and the previous election in Bangladesh, those standards was all right. But this time, some happening where we will say that was the question. Some of the candidates withdrawn their candidates, opposition candidates particularly, maybe.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let's move on very quickly. We just have the last 1 or 2 minutes left. Now, Sheikh Hasina has promised to make Bangladesh a middle-income nation by 2021. And she has said in the next 10 years that she is going to triple the per capita income of what it is currently right now at $50 per person. So, in your view, do you see in light of how the human index indicators have been so positive in her tenure, can she continue this, especially in light of the alleged human rights claims of violation that she has done against the press, she has done with regards to enforced disappearances that the people of Bangladesh are so afraid of? Do you feel like she is going to meet her promises in this term?
Those are the challenges for Sheikh Hasina's government in the coming years because she will be the Prime Minister for next 5 years. And if you look at the last 10 years, it was 6% growth rate, the infrastructural development, the nuclear power station, and also the Padma Bridge, which was challenged by the World Bank, and other infrastructure, metro rails, or many things are in her hands, and some of have already started. And these are the economic developments future, and also you just asked about the human rights. So balancing all the human rights and also the development, everything is the challenge for next 5 years for Sheikh Hasina's government, and everybody hopes
Thank you so much. Challenges. Thank you so much, Mr. Kareem. Challenges ahead of the third term of Hasina as now starts, and whether she can continue democracy or she can continue development or manage this time round to put both of them hand in hand and move Bangladesh forward. That's all the time we have at Newsfire. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.